The Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth. Make it amazing.
Good evening, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Crystal L. Gunn, financial strategist for women, founder of the Amazing Women Network, and host of Amazing Women Speak, a celebration of Black women by Black women, where we strive to bring info to uplift, inspire, and motivate every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing as it was established at birth. Back in 2013, 2014, I published an online magazine, Amazing Women Speak. And after a while, it became way too much for me. So I stopped and I put it on the shelf. And then in 2018, 2019, we started having conversations about the magazine again. And the goal was to bring the magazine back, and it didn't happen. And over the past year, Amazing Women Speak stayed with me, and I realized it was supposed to happen, but not as an online magazine, but as a podcast. So today, I'm extremely excited because this is the first episode of Amazing Women Speak, the podcast, another historical day for the Amazing Women Network. And I'm also excited because on this historic day, the first episode of Amazing Women Speak, my first guest is my best friend, Michele Davenport Harper. And she's been my best friend for over 30 years. Oh, okay. She is goddaughter to my daughter, and I'm godmother auntie to her daughters. She is mother, wife, sister, friend, has an executive leadership position, and owns her own business. She is dope, amazing, and my shero. Please welcome Michele Davenport Harper.
Good evening. And had I known I needed tissue to enter into this conversation, I would have been better prepared.
Listen, it was the setup because I have mine. And I could hear Niall saying right now, girl, you in them tears. So tell us a little bit about Michele Davenport Harper.
Yes. So I entered this world as Michele Yvette Davenport, a very proud woman of Aaron Davenport, the daughter of Aaron Davenport and Laura Davenport. My father's no longer with me. And so I sit before you today as Michele Davenport Harper, intentionally having dropped my name, my middle name, and becoming Davenport as my middle name to honor my father, one who has really created the space for me to own legacy, for me to be thinking always about legacy, for me to really realize who I am and the power of owning that. Adding another man's name to mine doesn't change nor define who I am. So I sit before you today, not as Michele Yvette Davenport, but as Michele Davenport Harper, not hyphenated, fully owning a part of my journey and my story by acknowledging him in the middle of who I am. So I come to you as Michele Davenport Harper, really excited to be a part of this conversation. Looking at the journey that led me here is not one that you would call easy, but one that I own. Back in 22 almost, back in 2019, back in 2009, I was diagnosed with lupus. And at the time, it was not a diagnosis that many understood, and it was certainly not one where research was funded in order for us to have a better understanding. And the reason that is because it was Black and brown women who were being diagnosed. And we knew what that meant even then, that there was not going to be the right kind of funding, there was not going to be the right kind of attention created that would allow us to better understand what we were dealing with and better understand what treatment opportunities might be there. So that really defined me in that moment. That really invited me into a conversation that I did not know that I needed to be a part of, to start talking about what it is to be marginalized as a Black and brown woman, just trying to show up and live in this world. And so certainly, as any new situation that has a negative impact on your life, when that thing happens to you, you go into this dark space. And so I battled depression for a really long time because I didn't understand what was happening to my body. And I did not have advocacy in the medical community to help me understand what was happening. And so I had to figure it out for myself. And I had to keep pushing when people were trying to minimize in the medical system what was happening to me. And so to have to learn to advocate when you don't even understand, and the people that you trust to help you figure that out weren't willing to hear. And so that gave me a voice of really learning how to advocate for myself, and then recognizing if it was happening to me, an educated Black woman, there were certainly women who did not have education, who did not know how to use voice, that were going to need that as well. So when a calling is put on your life and you don't even know it, God will continue to put you in spaces, right? I'm not talking foreign to you this morning, this evening, to know when a calling is put on you, there's no denying that. And so that really began for me the journey into really understanding the importance of utilizing voice, not being silenced, and really owning who you are, the good and the bad and all of it, and really allowing yourself to understand what it means to be great in the middle of your adversity, in the middle of your challenges and your trials, and still show up because somebody's watching, somebody's depending on you. And for me in that moment, it was my girls, right? So I have two daughters who mean absolutely everything to me. And all of the decisions I made, both good, bad, right, or wrong, were really out of trying to create space for them to be able to see me excel, and to really understand the importance that while the world is going to think less of you, that you think more, and you don't deny that, and you own it, and really set your path on greatness. So everything that I've done, every step that I've taken, again, the good and the bad I own, because I was wanting to set the stage for them to understand the importance of who they are as Black women, and really start thinking about every single day, good or bad, you're creating legacy. What do you want that legacy to be?
So there was so much in that, right? And first, you use your voice, which is so powerful, right? You use your voice in so many areas, not just in that lupus space, but in so many areas. And hats off to you for that, because it becomes, I know, this constant juggle, right? So this thing was put on you, right? And God has a way of using us. And, you know, I often say, be careful when you say, okay, God, use me as you see fit.
Right, right.
And you'll be like, okay, but I didn't mean like that though. But so how long did it take you to be obedient though? Because, you know.
Ooh, right. Right now on December 24th, right? I'm still learning, because right, like when you say use me,
baby,
right? So I think about all the times he said, okay, watch this and watch this, right? And so when I wasn't even sure how to figure out to continue to trust, that when I asked for it, that he was also going to prepare me for it. So yeah, I think it would be this o'clock right now is when I learned how to fully be obedient and trust, right?
And that's it's the trust part too, because okay, yeah, I can be obedient and go through the motions, but I have to trust and believe that he's going to show up and deliver.
Right.
And undoubtedly,
and remember, did every time before.
The time before that, and the time before that.
Absolutely.
And like you said, I swear, he's up there tapping somebody on their knee, like, watch what we're about to do now. I'm like, are you really using me for your humor too? And yeah, so there was another, you started with lupus, but you also have had like a plethora of back surgeries. And I don't know, I remember sitting in, and this had to be the last back surgery because you said you would never do another one after this. But sitting in your bedroom, you were sitting in the chair with because although this was back surgery, they had to go in through your neck or something.
Right.
Really, really weird, right? And you had this brace on your neck. You had to sit up in this chair while I'm lounging on the couch next to you. But I remember you saying that the doctor said you would not be able to go into the gym again.
Yes. Yes.
Which I know had to be devastating because you were training for and wanting to do
The bodybuilding.
right. And
the fitness competition.
and it was okay, we'll say your age. It was like fit at 50, right? So for the doctor to say, nah, that's not gonna happen. You'll never be in the gym again. First of all, what did that do to you mentally, spiritually, emotionally? And then how did you recover to be Michele Davenport Harper, owner of Agency Fitness right now?
Yes. Yeah, I remember when the pain was happening and I was trying to push through, and the doctor said, you're going to fool around and end up paralyzed doing what you do. You have the spine of an 80-year-old. Like, I don't know what's been happening in your journey prior to, but you have the spine of an 80-year-old. And for anyone with a chronic illness, anytime something happens, they blame that illness. Like, there were times, Chris, when I catch a cold and need to go to the doctor, and there's like, oh, that's your lupus, right? Like, no, sometimes a cold is a cold, right?
Right.
And so you can't get people to advocate again to give you the right kind of treatment or to address your issues because they only see one thing. And so when I first met with this doctor, I didn't tell him I had lupus. I wanted him to treat me for the condition that was in front of him that he was specialized in. And so I ended up having to have 2 surgeries in a matter of 6 months, one on my lower back and then one in my upper spine, C4. And he said to me, like you said, you will not be able to, right? Like, I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. And then I started thinking, if you're taking away the things that give me life, what is the purpose, right? Like, I might as well not have this surgery if the alternative is do none of the things you know and love.
Right.
Right? Like, okay, you said give up heels. So maybe I could get behind that one. But
maybe
telling me no fitness, you can't lift anything over 10 pounds. And at that time, I had just PR'd prior to the surgery, being able to back squat 225. So you're telling me you're not going to lift more than 10 pounds. I was like, okay, yep, you don't know the God I serve, was my message to him. I may never squat 225 again, but believe me when I tell you, I shall squat again. And so going through all of that, at that time, my trainer, hats off, to Christopher Huff, who was absolutely amazing and really understanding what I was going through, really hearing what it was that I want to accomplish. We created a plan before I went and had that surgery. And then coming out on the other side, recognizing that there are other women just like me who are just trying to find a way to add years to their life and to really be strong physically for all of the emotional things that we have to carry. And so I came out of that and I said, I'm committed to fitness in a different kind of way. I need to be able to do this for me. So I decided one day, what if I could work out for 30 days after going through all my physical therapy and all of that? For 30 days, something I've never done, even in my height of best health, whatever that looked like. What could I do for 30 days straight? 30 turned to 60, 60 turned to 90. We're in the middle of COVID now. You're not going anywhere. I was working out 2 times a day, sometimes 3 times a day. 30 days turned till I got to 208 straight days.
And you had a little cult following too with that.
Right? Who right? Like you never know. And when we talk to our little girls about how you show up, because you never know who's watching and you never know who needs what it is that you have, keep pushing, right? Like, so sharing that journey on social media started out that first 30 days about me, and then it became about everybody but me. People who never thought they could, right? Learning how to pick up 5 pounds, realizing that could one day get you to 10. Just really being really vulnerable in that journey. People started asking, I'm like, I'm not certified. Like, I'm out here doing this for me, right? And so again, in the middle of COVID, when the gym shut down and you didn't have access to your trainers, and trainers are trying to figure out what to do in the middle of all of this, went down, started in my own living room, right? Like with weights we found around the house, and people just started watching and people started asking. And then I needed to know, learn more about myself in this process. So I got certified. Never, right? Here we go again. Watch God. Never intending. People would ask me, like, when do you offer? I was like, nope, not doing that. Do you have merchandise? Nope, not doing that. When are you gonna? Nope, not doing that. No, I don't have merchandise for, right? Like, I'm not doing any of those things. God said, right? Like, literally, hold my dumbbells, watch this.
Right.
And so people were like, what do you call it? Like, I was like, it didn't have a name. Like,
because I wasn't trying to do this thing.
Correct, right? Like, none of this. I'm not doing this. So one of the things that really had been on my spirit, and it really came out of listening to a podcast from Tracy Ellis Ross, hats off to Diana Ross's daughter. Just have to throw that out there. We all know how I love her. Listening to a podcast about her owning her agency and what that meant. And when I started really diving into really understanding what it was for me to own mine, I knew that there was an opportunity to educate women around that, right? Like to start having some conversation, to really recognize how much we give of ourselves without thinking about the cost, right? And not thinking about, like, if I decided to own my agency first, then everything else could get better, instead of constantly us trying to pour from this empty cup, right? So that just kept coming back to me. It really was, this was not just about physical fitness. This was about spiritual fitness, right? This is about finding ways to be faithful, to be courageous, really owning who you are at all of the levels, even if it requires you at 50 plus to do a 180-degree turn, right? Not 360, flipping back but really turning this around, and going against the wind, going against the societal norms, all of those things, really looking at what it is to own your agency. There it is. And I said, if I ever LLC this, Chris was like, what do you mean if? Like, here we go. When we own this,
when we
LLC this, right? Agency Fitness gave birth.
Yeah, one thing you can't do is tell me that it's something that you want to do.
Please listen to her when she says that, because, right, like when you need accountability to a thing that she knows is birthed in your greatness, it's go time.
It's definitely go time. And go time doesn't always mean easy.
Right.
It does not always mean easy time. It does not always mean, and this one I'm speaking from experience, it doesn't always mean, yeah, it's go time, but what am I doing? Like, what am I exactly supposed to be doing? Okay, God, I'm gonna go, but what? It's you had a cult following, including me, right? And one would think, this is your best friend, get up and work out with her. And I was like, yeah, no, that was not my 2020 at all. 2020 was extremely difficult for me, with the ruptured appendix that I didn't know had ruptured. And then I couldn't get it together after that. So I watched the videos of you and I commented all of my support, right? But it was not time for me. But it became time for me. And again, understanding that me too had been on this fitness journey. I've had
right
trainers like since before Nile was born, and she's 20 now. So that's always been a thing, but I was not ready. And your sister often says you need to work out for a year before you decide to work out with Michele. And oh God. But the space you provide, and I've had every one of the trainers that I've had have all been male, have all been wonderful. Even those that I have gone to, like I've been to the gym with you with Huff before, and just, he's phenomenal, and his wife is phenomenal. But you offer something that I think women need, right? And and here's what's great. The crazy part is, it was a conversation with Tracy that then I called and was like, hey, wait, I want to be down. Like, how can I be down? But one of the things that she said was, and this is not taking away from any of these dope trainers that we've had before, but she talked about how supportive you were, right? And how encouraging, and how she saw the change in her body so quick. And, you know, of course, okay, if I'm going to go back to training, who else am I going to train with, right? But then I got to experience it and witness it. Now, you're extremely supportive, but you ain't cutting no slack. Let's just be clear, though, right? But you've created this space that I've never seen before, right? You've created this space around fitness and wellness. And I think part of the reason it resonates with me so is because, as you say, own your amazing, I've always said, I'm sorry, you say own your agency, and I've always said, own your amazing, right? And so it goes back to, and it's almost like now swears we've practiced witchcraft before in the past, because we've never had a conversation about either of those, right? We've never talked about that. And when we end this, I'm going to ask you to say the very thing that you say to us. And the first time I heard it, when you talked about owning your agency, I literally, after we worked out, I don't know if it was after we were stretching one Friday or if it was just a regular workout and you just gave that to us. Literally, I got up off the floor after a while, and I said, oh my God. And the words moved me to tears, because one, it speaks volumes to who you are. Like, one of the dopest and amazing women that I truly know, and I don't say that lightly, but what you pour into these women outside of the gym, right? It's something I've not witnessed that. And it became so abundantly clear when you had the event at the dinner at your house. And I saw these women from in their 20s to their 50s, right? All sitting at this table, all having this conversation, and being able to share and talk about things generationally, right? And it was incredible. Like, it was totally incredible. And then, you know, to see these women trust you, because I think when we start talking about and empowering other people, right? There has to be a level of trust, integrity, and always obedience. And to see these women trust you, right? Like, literally trust you and know that they're in this safe space. What was the thing that made you say, yeah, I can get their bodies together, right? But I have to be able to get their minds and their spirits together.
Right. Yes.
What was that thing that said, okay, this is how? And I know at the time you didn't have a name, but how is that became the thread that runs through agency fitness?
So it really is, it's that connection, right? Like of all of the things that were happening in my life, personally and professionally, there's the thing that the most important currency I have to offer is relationship, right? Like that's the thing, that's the needle that threads it all. And when I look at, when people say, like the market is saturated with this or with that, it's not saturated with your gift, right? In the way that you will bring it and bring life to it. And so there is someone who needs that portion. And so for me, that was always the thing that was missing, right? Was what does it mean to connect to who I am as an individual while I'm trying to figure out all of these other things? And that was it for me, right? Like knowing what it is to have to show up every day and people pile on, to have to show up every day and again, try to pour from this empty cup and then go home and try to take care of, like it really just bothered me and weighed me down to know that nobody was trying to care in that way, right? Like I wasn't finding that in so many of the spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we were going to really try to, at the time, like figuring out if we were really going to try to do better as women, right? Like we were watching our Black men die in the street in a really real way through social media, right? Like we were watching the Me Too movement and we were holding all of that tension, right? And I am clear, just running up and down a flight of stairs was not going to release that.
Mm-mm.
There was another part of that needed to happen, healing that needed to happen. And so that relationship piece for me, like that's the currency. People need to hear, be validated, and then be challenged to change, right? Like you got to give space to let a little bit of that steam off. And then now it's time for action, right? And so one of the things that has literally kept the fire burning, sometimes it's just the simmer, sometimes it's just the smoke that's left from the match that got lit, is
Right.
watching you own it, right? Like, and deny that, like, I'm not really supposed to own this. And then it was the one more thing. And then it was the one more thing. And then watch them all seamlessly come together, right? Like that's again, sometimes it's just the simmer. And then when you turn that fire up on all of the things, and I watched the Amazing Women Network really give birth, and you were doing the Red Dot campaign, and then 50-50 Accord came, I'm like, all of these pieces, and then they seamlessly came together. It made sense that sometimes things had to be on simmer before they could fully burn, right? And so really holding that, and when you talk about the importance, if you really want to achieve greatness, you better find a room of other dope women in order to be able to do that. Otherwise, right, like you'll never get the movement, the traction, the support, the outcomes that you need if you're not surrounding yourself with folks who have the goals, and it's not the competition. That's the beautiful thing about Black women that has been misspoken about, right? Like we know how to get together and be dope as hell and support one another, and right, and not really, and this catty thing, right? Like society put that on us. No, we know how to come together and be amazing, and watching you over the years. And then still finding space to reach back out and say, hey, what happened to the book? Okay, you don't want to write it? Give me some of those quotes. I'm going to put it in mine, right? Like, no, I know how to keep it simmering until it's time to burn, right? And so when people kept saying, like, when is it going to be a thing? Can I? When? And like, no, if you make space for it, God will give. And I'm like, I have a full-time job that I love. How am I going to do, right? Like, again,
which is a totally weird statement anyway, because there's not many people out there that say they have a full-time job that they love, right? It's a lot of people that, you know, but that's always been a weird thing for me. But I remember the beginning of that, right? And just all of, and over the years, you know what I mean? So that's a weird space. I remember sitting on Kim's couch, I don't know, maybe it had to be August, maybe, because it was before now I went back to Florida. And,
Right.
and you still were like, no, this is not going to be a thing. This is not going to be a thing. And then it went from that to just almost days later, where not only is it a thing, there will be a building, there will be video, there will be, you know, the podcast.
See what I mean about the simmer, right? See what I mean about the simmer? Right? That accountability is necessary for us, because at some point you feel like you can't take on one more thing, and we have capacity. We just have to be in a space where other folks are going to help us figure out how to get that capacity, right? Like, again, I was clear, right? Like, I'm not going to post agency fitness is alive and going on social media, because people are going to come. And I'm grateful, and I don't have capacity. And so we were agency fitness for about 6 months before I even put that logo out there, in a way, because I was like, I can't one more time. Once again, God, here, hold my dumbbells, watch this, right? And so it's about the adjustment, right? Like, how do you make the right adjustments to be able to do the thing that you've been called to do? Because it's bigger than you. Right. And so to watch women in their 20s and women in their 50s sit down and share space and understand that there's a generational conversation that has to happen, that there is some knowledge that we have yet to learn from the millennials about how navigating their space and create space that they feel open enough to share it, that we get that opportunity, right, that we can pour back into them in a way that helps lay some of that groundwork, that they understand legacy, that they understand owning agency and owning their amazing, that they have no clue about. And so to watch that happen in that space, I knew that I had to continue to find ways to do more of that, because the need was there, again, across the spectrum, right? Like, irregardless of age, of fitness level at that time, there was a healing that needed to happen, and it had to happen emotionally before it could ever have the right kind of impact physically.
And it's amazing how things happen, because had it not been for the pandemic, right?
Right.
Which made it easy and acceptable to have the online classes, because that's all we could really do.
Right. Right.
Right. And even in that, though, you easily could have, 50 women in a class, at 8 a.m. during the week, easily, right? But you've always made it a point to say, no, I need to keep it small, because I don't want to be going through the screens trying to, and the way that you are able to do that and to speak life into the people, because you see it, because the numbers, you keep them small enough that you can see everybody, and when they need to hear their name in the, not just for correction, right? But you can see when they need to hear your name, their name, and those words of encouragement to get them through those prison workouts, as Tracy would say. Like, I swear she sits up at night thinking about some new exercises for us to do. But that is, again, speaks volumes to who you are, but it's that thing that makes you and agency fitness so special, because you pay attention and you intentionally pour into people, not just for the physical outcome, but for every other outcome that comes. And it's so much of what we need during this time, and especially as Black women.
Yeah. So, and that's why I said the market could be saturated with the talent, but the gift that you bring to that talent, right? And so it is, God ensures that I am provided for financially through the job. Yes, it is that I do love, so that I can, one, keep it reasonable and keep it small. because that one-on-one feeling, even in a group setting, is really important to me. Because again, that's part of my love language, right? Like that relationship, and then to be able to execute, right? Like people think that it's odd that I'm both an executor and a relationship builder, right? But that's important to me. And so I know, and it's not for everyone, right? Like some folks don't need that. And that's the reason why we need to have more of the
Right.
talent out there to fit. You got to find what works for you.
Right.
And so I'm very grateful that the folks that show up, the women that train at Agency Fitness, recognize that the thing that's going to happen with the transformation of the body is sustained because we're going to transform how we see ourselves spiritually and emotionally.
So let's talk about that job that you love so much, because it's just gonna give me, you know, more opportunities to brag on my best friend. And it you're so you bring it, you set a room on fire. That thing that you say on Mondays, give them all you got.
Give them all they can handle. Make them choke on the rest.
Right. And you bring that, but even in bringing that, you bring it in a way that is beautiful and elegant. And I remember having a conversation with you when these things in the job happened, and you were like, oh yeah, I got, you know, these new positions or did this. And then we have a conversation and you really tell me like what it is. And I'm like, okay, you do recognize that this is huge, right? And you were like, yeah. And I'm like, no, this is huge and also more legacy work, because what you're doing is changing, it's changing the trajectory, and it's changing how the state will actually work long after you're gone.
Yeah. So it's one of the things, right? Like when I was thinking about some of the questions that you sent to help frame this dialogue, that really resonated with me. And we've been socialized to be so humble and so quiet and so, right? So when amazing things were happening to me that like, yep, you should be really bragging, and I shouldn't care that people see it as like she's bragging on herself. Her ego is huge, right? And so I struggle personally with that ego and humility piece of that. Where's that fine line? And I'm really trying to break out of that. So even yet, I'm going to share something with you that just happened today.
See?
That like, right, like I'm feeling different about this. So I've been with the state of Michigan for 20 plus years, and I've had some jobs that I would never do again inside of state government, but I kept showing up, right? Like I kept showing up and I kept living out of who I'm purposed to be, right?
And
so
you kept showing up when others with those same positions, because I can remember conversations, you showed up in big ways when other people weren't showing up in half of those ways, right? Because it's who you are.
Yeah, even when I was being overlooked,
right?
I kept showing up. And even with every no, right? Like certainly some of the no's that I received, it hurt, right? Like I'm showing up, I'm doing the work, and I'm still being overlooked, right? Like all along, race and racism is playing its thing. It's doing the thing that it's intended to do. Marginalizing Black women was doing the things the system intended for it to do. Kept showing up because, again, who I am, right? Legacy. Aaron and Laura did not raise me to do anything but. So I'll figure out my frustrations over here, but I'm going to show up. And so it set me up for where I really needed to be, and ended up in a leadership position, really under helping the department. We supported 15,000 employees. How do we understand the importance of leadership principles, right? We can teach people to do a job, but how do we embed those leadership principles that are going to help the person coming behind you really understand what it is to lead effectively, right? So I got into that position. And so to be the only Black woman in the room so many times, conversation naturally had to come up with why is that?
Right.
having to challenge other folks in the room. Why is it that I'm the only Black voice in this room? And then when there are issues when we want to talk about, everybody has to turn their head to me. No, thank you. How about we invite more folks to the table?
Right.
Why don't we
Right.
do that? Right? Like, I do not speak for all Black people. I don't speak for all Black women. How about we get some diverse voices in here? Right? Like, how don't we toy with that idea? And doing all of this work for years and years and years, when the department did not have dedicated resources or an office for equity work to be happening, we kept pushing and pushing. And unfortunately, we had to leverage the murder of George Floyd to get the state of Michigan to understand that we needed some structure around this, right? Like, we couldn't just keep doing this work inside of our normal jobs and think we're going to have an impact. The state of Michigan citizens were crying out, like, you are the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. What are you doing? Where are you providing spaces for Black and brown people who are traumatized to have conversations? And white leaders weren't equipped. And so once again, all of the heads turned to the Black woman in the room, right? So that can't be. And so we're going to create a position, and we're going to create it at a level that I was already at. And I'm like, I love what I do in leadership. Why would I take on trying to support work? I'm doing it, and you want to pay me? No, thank you.
Right.
No, I know my worth, right? I'm not going to add on stress. So we keep pushing along. Eventually, they create a whole office around it. And I apply for the job. And people are like, oh, we know Michelle's going to get it. I'm not offended by that because I've done the work. I'm the one that needs to show up. So yeah, so to become the first Black woman to lead the Office of Race, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion inside the state of Michigan, supporting 15, yes, right? Like, before I did it, I was quiet about that. But no, that's dope, right?
It's
I'm the
dope.
first Black woman to do that. That's legacy, right? Eric Davenport, that's legacy. So I keep showing up. Here's the news. Back in August, I get an invitation to apply for a position outside of state government. I've been in the state 23 years. I'm clear, I'm retiring, love my job, great team. I get an invitation to apply, national search. Oh, I wonder what I resonate, right? Like, what does my voice look like in the middle of folks doing this work across the country? What does my voice look like? I'm throwing my hat in the ring, just curious. Not gonna take a job. I wasn't even sure I would get an interview. National search. Mind you, although I've been doing this work for years and years and years, it's never been in a paid position until October of 2019, right? Is when I got a formal paid position. So I know people around the country who have been doing this work for years and years and years. I was like, so my experience doesn't show up resume style. You got to get in the room, I can tell you what I've done, right?
Right.
So August, we go through all of these processes. I get invited to the first round. I get invited to the second round.
But of course.
I'm like, wait, what's happening here, right? I get invited to the third and then get asked to do a presentation. I was like, oh, messed around and put me in my room now, right? Like, my space, right? Like, my gifts, I own my gifts. My ability to inspire, to motivate, to change hearts and minds and challenge folks to be different is my gift. You put me in a room, right? Like, I am clear. I can allow you to see all of that in a way that makes it clear to you that I'm the person that should be doing whatever, right? In the middle of this, I get an invitation to be a keynote speaker in a space that I didn't even know they knew my name. Watch it work, right? So in the meantime, I'm going through this process, and every time they ask me one more time to show up, I'm like, is God telling me it's time to move to the next thing? It's time to move to the next thing. And so about round 4, I was clear, Crystal, that I was going to take this job, that I was going to leave state government to be able to go into after 20 plus years, to go into the private sector and do this work in a smaller scale where I could have a greater impact. The thing that challenged me was around legacy, because the thing that I'm doing inside of the state, any needle that gets moved is legacy, because I created it. Where in this new job, right, I can have impact. The legacy will look different because it's not something I created. I have to step into something and then reshape it, right? So I was really battling with that piece of it, right? Like, is it impact or is it legacy? And then it took someone to say to me, you've already created the legacy. You built the team. If you take that job, trust that we will carry it on. Right? And that's what legacy does, right? Legacy doesn't intend for you to be in it forever, right? Because, right, like eventually death is going to happen for each of us. So have you set it up? The benefit of me moving forward is I'll get to see what happens in that from afar, right? So the new job offered me the job, but they didn't offer me my worth.
Say it again, please.
They offered me the job, but didn't offer me my worth. And I was clear. And she said, I know it's not what you asked for, but.
There is nothing after
there is no
that.
But.
Right.
There is no but, right? Like I got excited. I could see myself in this new role, but I know my worth. And as Black women, we have to understand that and make that a non-negotiable all the time. Your worth is non-negotiable. And the worth may not always be around money, right? But when all things else are equal, what are those other factors that have to be present? And you do not negotiate on those. And so I said, I gave you my number way back in August. Like I was clear then, in order to leave the state, this is what it needed to look like. And we were apples and oranges, Crystal. Like we weren't talking $5 or $10, right? Like we were apples and oranges. And so I was clear. Usually in negotiation, people aren't going to take their apples and flip them to oranges.
Right.
Right? Like they'll try that mashup. No, but I know my worth. Like in this work, I know my worth. And so she came back to me and she said, I want you. This company needs you. Tell me what you need to get to a yes. Right then, right? Like right then, I knew that God had been setting all this up for a really real reason, right? It wasn't at that moment no longer about the dollar. It's about somebody understanding your worth because you did not allow it to be negotiated away. And that's what was important for me. I know what I'm doing, I'm good at it, and being able to say those things out loud again, ego, humility. Where's that space? Yeah, owning your agency, owning your amazing, knowing how dope you are, like say it for yourself, right? Like I've got folks around me, but to be able to speak those words for yourself was life-changing for me because it's not a space, again, that I rested in well, because it's always that, right? Like we've been socialized as Black women. If we speak too loud, if we, like all of those things.
Just sit there and be quiet.
Right?
You can't, yeah.
No, don't invite me to the table then, right? Like that's the space I'm in now. Don't invite me to the table because silence is not the option for me. And you minimizing my worth is not acceptable, period.
And sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm going to this thing or this meeting, and I'm like, but it's not my meeting, so I'm not gonna say, but it never fails.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay,
right.
It just is what it is.
Sit here with all this stuff right here, right, and hold it. It's not my meeting, and
yeah, but it's like, okay, well, I gotta jump in. In. Okay, so what happened? She came back and she said, I need you.
Yes, right. And so again, relationship is one of my love languages, right? So when I've given you everything that you need to know that I can do this actual job, and I'm telling you, in order, if you want me, this is what it's going to cost you and your organization, right? Not just financially. Here are the supports I'm needing, asking for, requiring in order to be able to do this job. And she said, whatever it takes to get you to yes is what I have for you.
What? So
whatever,
this part is new.
Yes.
Because we just had a conversation a couple of days ago.
Right?
That was like, no, we can't.
Yes. Right? So, I appreciate that you're saying that you can't, and I'm telling you what I can't. Right? Like the idea that you asked me what my bottom number was, I gave that to you.
And you didn't
right? Like again,
close.
I'm not going to negotiate away what I'm telling you I know my worth is and what I can bring to your organization. I support 15,000 employees. Let me tell you what I can do for 200 plus.
Come on.
Like, let's be clear, right? So again, call it bragging, call it ego, but I'm no longer in that space where I'm willing to hold, minimize, and settle for a little bit less so that you can see me how you think I'm supposed to be seen. I just may not be the girl for your party, and I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with, right, is again, negotiating away my worth anymore. I won't do it in silence, right? Like I was doing it in silence, just sitting there and accepting a little less, because at least it gets me in the room. Accepting a little less, because at least they'll see me. No, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, right? Like if I'm in the room, I shall be heard. I'm not going to be silent, and I'm not going to negotiate, again, not just financially, and especially financially, right? Like my community needs more what I can provide through increased income.
Right.
Right. And so you also are telling me that, yes, we'll give you what you're worth, but it's at the top of the cap for the grade that you're in. I said, wait, so you're telling me yes, and in 2 years I'll cap out? No, thank you.
Right. Because I'm not thinking about this today.
She said, tell me again, what do you need to get the yes? These are the things, right? Like, again, keep showing up. Somebody's seeing, somebody's watching, somebody needs your gift and your talent. You just got to keep showing up. So now they've reclassified the whole position. There is no ceiling. There is no ceiling, right? So again, it could be one of those things where you say, oh, I don't deserve all of that, right? Like, why would they choose me? Like, why not?
Right.
How have you shown up? Right? Like, it's going to be clear. Just make sure it's clear to you too. Don't be the last person in the room to figure out just how amazing you are, just how dope you are.
I think there's so many things that we've talked about that I know women will be able to take away and use, but it's that last piece, owning your gifts and knowing your worth, right? Because we know, I've never worked for state government, but you've done corporate America, and corporate America looks very interesting, right? With the color hues, and we know that there's limited space in those areas for people that look like us. But what you said is just so powerful, and so we take less because we want to get in the room, and it's like, no, but do I want to be in this room bad enough to sell myself short?
Right.
And we have to stop selling ourselves short. Now, it's not easy, right, to say, especially when someone's dangling a carrot in front of you, that's more money or, you know, bigger position or more notoriety in this position. It's not easy to say no for some, but you got to go back to owning your own amazing and saying, well no.
Right. And that's the journey, right? Like, that's the journey. I didn't wake up in that space, right? Like, there would have been a time in my life, you dangle that money, right? And I'm in, and I'm selling a piece of my just to sit at the table, right? Like, so that's real. Let's be clear. I didn't wake up and just have this immediate epiphany that, right? Like, money doesn't matter to that degree, right? Yeah, it does.
It does.
Right. Like, you have to be able to evaluate what's the risk factors here, right? Like, how much can I give up? How much can I lose? Is this the right position, the right season, the right time? And then how much, again, at the end of the day, am I good with who I am? Right. And at this point in my life, that's the measuring stick. I have to be okay with it. And to know, again, I don't want to be in every room, right? Like, you can invite me in all. Some of them I don't even want to be in. That's not my space, right? And sometimes your no, and this is one of the things I really try to get women to understand. Sometimes your intentional no is the next woman's yes. So you don't have to do all of the things. We're going to give another woman an opportunity to step up, to challenge herself, to lean into that one, right? And that only happens when we do things like this, right? Like, when we really uplift each other to really see there's space for all of us. So I'm intentionally going to say no so that another woman gets an opportunity to say yes. Can't be in all of the rooms and be effective.
You can't be in all of the rooms and be effective, and you're not supposed, because the invitation comes doesn't mean that it's ultimately for you. And that journey to owning, honoring, and executing you're amazing is, like you said, you didn't wake up one day and say, I got it, right? It
No,
is a definite journey.
No,
and
ma'am.
Faith plays a huge part in that. I remember right after Papa died, it was probably, I don't know, a couple months later, and I'm laughing at this part because of what I'm about to say. I'm working out. This was by myself. This was before I started. Jeez. So I'm working out in the living room, right? And I hear his voice just like clear as day. And he said, what are you waiting on, right? You have no more excuses. I'm not here anymore. You're not coming to sit with me. You're not coming to watch a game with me. You're not coming to, help your mother. You're all out of excuses. What are you going to do now? Right. And I was like, okay. And I realized though, through that conversation and through what I was hearing was because my faith in God is absolutely unshakable. It's
right,
crazily unshakable.
Right.
So, but I realized it wasn't my lack of faith in God. It was my lack of faith in me.
Come on.
Right? And I was like, okay. So now that I know the real problem, how do I get past it?
Right.
And the answer, because that's how he works, he'll give you the answer too, was borrow the faith that you have in me. And it was, if you, God says, go out here, uplift and empower these women, the only way I fail is if I not do it. Right? That's the only way that I can fail.
Right.
Because if you gave it to me, you trusted me enough with the gifts, the talents, all of that. You trusted me enough to go out here and make it happen. It's not happening the way I want it to happen because I'm not doing it the way that I'm supposed to be doing it. Borrow your faith in God for a minute and then watch the faith in yourself come. Right.
Wow.
And that was, again, I was 2017 and I have been doing, working with women financially, doing all of this stuff for all of these years because this whole Amazing Woman Network thing came like in 2011, 2012. So it was like, okay, knowing I had my own journey to go through in order to understand how to empower somebody else. But it's that faith. And so people, when people say, you're scared, you do it anyway, right? That's easier said than done. But it's like, where do you draw your strength and your faith? And mine was, okay, well, I'm going to set my own self-doubt aside because I don't know as much as the maker, right? So I'm going to say, okay, God, again, I yield and I'm going to trust you because you've had me like you had me before,
right?
So I think that is like one thing that's huge. And like you said, it takes a while to, because it took me a while to own those gifts and to be able to say the other thing. And I'm going to say this to you because someone said this to me and I think it's so fitting. And we had just like this celebration and I'm big on celebrating the wins of others, right? Because we don't celebrate ourselves enough. We beat us up. We didn't do this. We should have done it this way. I didn't make this
right.
But we don't celebrate the big wins and the small wins, right? Because the small wins add up to more bigger wins. And so I'm big at doing that. And we had this meeting and it was all celebration for what people had done. And we get to the end of the meeting and Yvette says, Crystal, I need you to sit back for a minute and take a look at the impact that you've had on these people, right? The impact, bringing together a platform and seeing these women grow. I mean, and these are dynamic women in and of themselves, but seeing the relationships being built and seeing them go after the things that they said they wanted to do and accomplish those things. And she says, I don't think you really recognize that impact. And I said, I don't, because I don't stop for long enough, right?
Right.
Or the other thing is, you think, okay, but I should be doing more. But again, I'm not celebrating in what has been accomplished, right? So I'm saying, I give that example because I didn't say that to you. Like, please take the time to look and see the impact that you're having on the women that you touch through agency fitness, through church, through work, through just in your friendship itself. Make sure you celebrate in that, because it's important, and you get to see, yeah, we talk about legacy, but you get to see your legacy right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? You get to see it right now. And I don't know, I think it's awesome and amazing. Tell me, what do you love about being a Black woman?
Right. Yeah. So when I saw that question, I was like, I wanted to flip that on its head, right? Like, if I could be anything else, what I be, and what would that woman look like, right? And so I ran through that journey, like, over the last couple of days, right? Like, what is it like to be a Black woman? Like, I don't have a choice, it's who I am. But if I got to choose something different, would I, and what would she look like? And no matter how many times, right? Like, we look at white women who have privilege and get to navigate through the world, right? And we look at Latina women and we look at their beauty and we think, like, if I had a little bit of that, if my lips were a little small, if my nose was, right? Like, all of those things that the world sees. And then I came back and I started thinking about the women whose shoulders I stand on. The women who have come before me, who have paved the way, who did not even know they had impact, right? And recognize there's nothing else I would rather be. Through the trials, through the assassinations, both emotionally, physically, to the body that Black women have, like, there's nothing else I would rather be. Because when a Black woman rises from the ashes,
come on,
there's nothing more powerful, more beautiful, more earth-shaking than her. That's what I want always to be. So that's why being Black, being a woman, first choice, only choice, all the choices, even if somebody gave me something else to be, right? Like, there's nothing more dope in that. And it's unfortunate and fortunate, right? Like, that our overcome story gets magnified because we shouldn't have to have as many as we do.
Right.
But again, when she rises from the ashes, those are our stories, right? Like, those are the shoulders of the next that I'm looking to stand on and broaden myself for her to stand on mine. Because that, again, when we rise,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's
Right there.
magical, right? It's absolutely, because when you look at the intentional target that we are, right, for demise,
Right?
and yet somehow we still rise every single time. That is some of the most powerful things to witness. It's just like, it's like you said, there's I would rather be nothing than
nothing.
That's
nothing.
There is no other option to even, there's nothing that compares, right?
Right. And so it's really interesting. So in doing equity work, we like to talk about, especially when having conversations with white folks, we like to talk about the oppression Olympics, right? Like, so we can say something happened to us and then a white person, like, you will not win gold ever.
Ever.
Let's be clear. You cannot win gold, right? Who holds the permanent gold? And that's the Black woman.
Yeah.
Hands down, right?
Yeah.
She has bore your children. She is raised on her own. She is provided for out of nothing, and still has a story that really elevates what's happening in her community, what's happened in her home, right? So you can't play the oppression Olympics ever. Black woman holds gold. Holds
Hands
gold.
down.
right?
In
And
every category.
the training was blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
Right? The victory was hard fought, hands down. I'm going for gold.
And so for us, wow, for us in this day to do anything less than go for gold is disrespectful.
Correct, right? And even more so, the idea that we think, and for some of our Black women, that we think we don't deserve the gold, right? Yep. So again, these kind of conversations really challenging us to think differently, to change that narrative, right? Don't endure, don't go through and not think that you don't deserve the very best on the other end of that.
Right.
Right? Like, we're not going to sit in that apathy. We're not going to sit in that woe is me. We may have that moment, but you better believe it's the passing through. Right?
Right.
And
right.
our job collectively, as those of us who had experienced it enough, to make sure we walk through that room and pick our sisters up and ensure that she makes it through to the other side. And not every story is going to be the victory story. Get that, right? Like, every part of this journey has not been, but I couldn't undo any of them without understanding that I might be undoing the outcome.
Correct.
Right?
Because the losses and the lessons are just are equally, if not more, important than the victory, because
Correct.
we couldn't have gotten the victories without learning the lessons from those losses. Right. So we have to be grateful. Took me a minute to because, like, really, God, why I gotta go through?
Right. Right.
Okay, this again. And then you look back and you be like, okay, that second time you went through it, that wasn't God, that was you. That was you.
Right.
That had nothing to do with God. Don't put that one on him. You went through that one again because you ain't pay attention the first time.
And it's really interesting. Recently, I've been in prayer. I find myself asking God for, like, give me strength to ... And he put on my spirit, how about you use the strength I already gave you? Right? Like, you keep asking for more of a thing that you haven't even used in the abundance of it that I've already given. And watch what happens there. So yeah,
okay, that was a whole word.
Right? Like, I had to change my prayer because I kept asking for the thing that he had already given me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, message received, right? Like, once again, like, I hear that, right? And so you said something that resonated with me, right? Like, so I have been in all of this setup around this new opportunity. Like, there's been a hesitancy that I have not been able to figure out, right? Like, a little bit of this fear. Do I leave the comfort of 23 years and blah, 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 even when this package, right? Like, they're setting it up to say everything about you is the thing that we need.
I love that.
There's something, right, that I need to. I got to borrow the faith that I have in him and play, like, of this conversation, an hour and 15 in, that's the thing, right? Like, and had I not shown up today, that part of it wouldn't have been, right? Like, I needed that to remember in this decision, borrow from the faith that that I have in him.
Right.
And own it myself to make the decision and step out of this ideal of fear, and knowing that even if I fall, I will get up. Right? Like, thank you for that.
And there's a thought process, or will, which I truly believe nothing happens until the exact moment it's supposed to happen. And nothing happens that isn't supposed to happen, right? For some reason, and we you look at the tragedy and all of that, but there is a reason for it, and it was supposed to happen. And I think about the conversation that we had. Was that Saturday? That was Saturday, the brunch.
Saturday.
Right? The conversation that we had about what was happening with that new position on Saturday, and today, not a full week later, but them, right? And so there was a decision then that you didn't have to make because it was made for you, right? and we then said, because of then what happened after that, and then the thing was, okay, guy showed up and showed out, but he wasn't done though. Right? He wasn't done, and going and trusting in that. So if you trust and have that faith, the fear subsides some, right? Because it's new territory, right?
For sure.
But we always have to go back and say, you know what, but he ain't let me down 6 days ago. Right? So he's still making it happen. He wasn't done with the decision yet, because the decision ultimately is his, and we never really know how high, like where we think our heights can go.
Right?
We can't even imagine where. So I'm so excited to see what the package is that they come back with. Like, I'm giddy over here that they had to come back and say to this Black woman, hey, whatever you need, because you're so dope, because you're so dynamic, we're going to try to work that out for you. What?
Right. And again, recognizing that I own every bit of that, right? Like I deserve every bit of that.
You deserve every bit of it and more, right?
Yeah. And yeah, it's the thing of stop minimizing, thinking that you don't deserve, right? Like, and this is not even the tip of what God is going to do.
It's not even it's not even the tip of the iceberg. And I have said in the beginning, definitely my shero. I watch on the sidelines like, this lady is so dope. And I remember, the days of Michigan State, Go Green, and all of the laughter and to sit here 30 some years later, it's just, I don't know. I'm so grateful for you. So incredibly grateful. So we're going to wrap this up. And I told you at the beginning that I wanted you to close us out with what that thing that it is that you say to us that literally just spoke volumes to me the first time I heard it. And I think it's going to speak volumes to all of our listeners. So for those of you that joined us today, thank you so very much. But please, I want the last words that we hear in this episode to be those that you say. So Michele Davenport Harper, thank you so much for being my best friend. Thank you for being here today on the first day of the Amazing Women Speak podcast. I love you to the moon and back. And I can't wait to be the guest on your podcast. So please close us out only as you can.
Yeah, so I am so very grateful and honored to have shared space with you. Right, so I don't take this 30 years lightly. Growing up a military child, you didn't get best friends because every 2 to 4 years you were moving. And so you did not know what that, as a child, I did not know the importance of those connections. I didn't have them because every 2 to 4 years. So to be able to say, like, it took me, I was 19 when I finally got a best friend. So I don't take that relationship lightly. And over the 30 years that we've been in this thing and all of the ups and the downs, you measure friendship by knowing where's your midnight hour? Who can you pick up the phone in that midnight hour? And you have always, whether it's been 1 day since we last spoke or 30, you've always shown up in my midnight hour. And I'm grateful, not just to be in your presence, which is a gift in and of itself. Any woman searching to help understand her space, both physically, emotionally, financially, you need to be in the space of Crystal Gunn and how she owns her amazing, and she's created intentionally a platform for the rest of us to figure it out. And when she talks about not celebrating just the work that she's done, creating a platform through 50/50 Accord for other organizations to be acknowledged and uplifted. That's what it's about. That's the thing that I get to be grateful for. Watching, even when I'm not able to be present, like that's my best friend who's changing the conversation, changing the narrative of what it really, really means to own. You're amazing, to be amazing as a Black woman and give space for that. I'm grateful, I'm humbled. It's the gift that I knew that I deserved, just didn't know what it was gonna look like. It took me till I got to Michigan State to find my best friend, and I'm forever grateful for you. And so you're right, like, right, witchcraft, our girls talk about that all the time, and we performed it in some way, God placing in us, owning your agency, and that ideal around owning your agency. So imagine if today was the day you decided to take control. Imagine if today was the day that you decided that all of the things that held you down and before were no longer yours to own. What if today was the day you decided to own your agency? Owning your agency is that day that you say, regardless to what yesterday held for me, today is my promise, tomorrow is my victory. Owning your agency is saying that despite what the world is putting upon me, I decide. Owning your agency is that thing that says in me is the greatest gift of all, and me holding on to it, me denying it is serving no one. Owning your agency is that moment in your life where your sense of control guides you to unspeakable, undeniable places. Owning your agency is your gift to the world. I cannot get any better. Crystal Gunn cannot get any better until you decide that your agency is the thing that drives all other things. I promise you, in the wreck that might happen, when you decide to turn it around, it's necessary for the beauty that's going to come on the other side. So I invite you today to do two things. One, acknowledge that you deserve, and two, without apology, without regret, and with full acceptance, to own yours, both your agency and the amazing woman that you are. So very grateful for you, Crystal Gunn. I am clear seats like this get created because of conversations like this, and I love you beyond.
Love you. Thank you so much. And I'm
Absolutely.
really about to go cry for about 15 20 minutes.